Remember that time yesterday I said the Pac-12 is interested in UNLV? Well, they are. They are. UNLV might want a different conference.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, craziest sport on planet Earth. Florida State did a little wide receiver swap. One left, one entered. What does that mean? Indiana get more help for Fernando Mendoza. That is all on today's show, which is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/FireTV, locked on to learn more. So, Drake 12 is here. I'm never going to call him anything else because it just flows. Some nicknames flow, some do not. Sid from Toy Story doesn't flow. That one sticks for me, though, 100%. So, Drake, a report from John Canzano came out recently that said a source at UNLV quoted to John saying, yeah, the Big 12 is in a future plan. And I was like, whoa, wait, they're in what plan? No. But the Pac-12 interest was there, and the Pac-12 wants them, but can they get them? That's going to depend on the legal situation. I have noticed the Big 12 has done things in Las Vegas before, not necessarily a sign of anything, but Vegas is not exactly in the footprint of the Big 12. Has hosting media days there more than a couple times just kind of been a foreshadowing that they could want him? Because I haven't really seen this as a great fit or need for the Big 12. I think they would add UConn before they added UNLV. But am I crazy here? What do you think?
Well, I don't know if UConn has the exact same market power that UNLV does. Las Vegas is big, and Brett Yormark loves Las Vegas. I'm not sure if he's like a big Caesars guy or if Ari is more of his deal, but he loves Vegas. Caesars. And so this is an enticing play for Brett Yormark. You know who it's not enticing for? University presidents and athletic directors. They're the ones who, when Brett Yormark has a big dream, kill that. They kill his dream every time. Brett Yormark wants to play in Mexico. No. Brett Yormark wants UConn. Stop. Brett Yormark wants Gonzaga. We're not doing the basketball thing. ADs across the Big 12, university presidents across this conference have kind of tampered some of the big ideas that Yormark has had. Now they let him have the whole, PR
tampering.
Must be BYU. You smell that? It smells like BYU.
I do.
Somewhere in and around here. It's no surprise to anyone, I think, around the Big 12 sphere that Brett Yormark is a visionary and that he wants to make this conference at the same level as the SEC and the Big 10, which it may never reach that. And the way to do that in his mind is find the right expansion candidates. Is UNLV that candidate? I don't think so right now. If you're going to loop in the universities to have an input, to have a say here, they're the ones who have kept Brett Yormark from Gonzaga, who have kept Brett Yormark from UConn. I think they'll do the same thing here, but UNLV is enticing, at least for him. Reason being, a football program on the up. They went to the conference championship game last year. They have a massive market to work off of. They have a great partnership with the Las Vegas Raiders and NFL team, some of the state-of-the-art complexes you can find in college football. Recruiting there isn't the worst. You tell a kid he can go play in Las Vegas. That's not bad. And the hire of Dan Mullen, a formerly successful SEC coach at one of the toughest places to be successful in the entire conference, the SEC. That guy now heads up UNLV and his football program. If they can win next season, will put themselves in an even more enticing spot for major conferences or to be the bell cow, really, of the Pac-12. That's not the worst thing in the world. That's not the worst spot in the world to be in if you're trying to get to the Big 12.
Yeah, and let's give credit to Barry Odom. I don't know that UNLV is as enticing. Maybe they still pop up on the radar for conferences, as much as the Mountain West made financial overtures towards them when the Pac-12 came around the first time. But as I talked about yesterday, I think the Pac-12 still might have some interest there. Whether or not it goes the other way remains to be seen. Kind of seems like UNLV is trying to keep its options open. I remember reading a piece last year that UNLV hosting UCLA was an audition for the Big Ten, and I came here on this very show, as a matter of fact, and said, "Okay, guys, let's pump the brakes. Let's make sure UNLV can be good at more than one sport for more than 2 years before we say, let's put them in the Big Ten." Like I don't know that that's really a thing, but The interesting factor for UNLV going to the Big 12, Drake, is I don't know where the appeal is for the Big 12 in the short term, because isn't the conference big enough? Isn't it stable enough? UNLV's not adding media rights value. They're diluting it slightly if they were to go into the conference. I don't know that they have the big pocket donors like an SMU, for instance, or they have so much money at their school like Stanford and Cal, where they can go join a new conference and say, hey, you just don't need to pay us anything, pretty much, which is literally what SMU is doing in the ACC. And still, they have among the most money in that entire conference. I don't think UNLV is in that sort of financial situation. So the Big 12 would have to see it as advantageous. And I just look at it and go, I don't know. They bring in a lot. The Big 12 loves basketball. UNLV's fine. Not great, not terrible. They're fine. And you're not adding a program, or you're not adding a school based on a football coach, right?
No, I don't think you would. This would be a conversation of foresight. If every athletic director had the foresight to know that SMU would be such a successful ad, maybe the Big 12 does take the Mustangs in that program under Rhett Lashley, or BYU coming to the Big 12. You make that move a lot sooner. Then again, with foresight, you might add UNLV over Cincinnati. You might go back and say, oh, shoot, they were good for a little bit in football and basketball, but can they be – you talk about schools that are media rights darlings. Will they bring you money in your media rights deal because they say, oh, we like that you have them, or that market, or that style, or that history? Cincinnati's not that. UNLV could be. They could be an SMU based on the Las Vegas market. They could be a BYU based off of a newfound commitment to football and their athletic facilities as well. I'm not saying it would happen, but if everybody knew that Tom Brady was going to be a multi-time Super Bowl champion, the greatest quarterback of all time, you probably draft him a little higher. You probably don't take Mitchell Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes. Not saying that UNLV would be Patrick Mahomes, but they could be. BYU has kind of become that for the Big 12 right now. SMU was in the college football playoff for the ACC. If you had known sooner, you probably pulled the trigger. So yeah, it's a risk. But if you don't take those and you're the Big 12, you're really going to lose out to the SEC and the Big 10. At this point, you're in risk mode. You're in press the red button, do something crazy. Because if you don't, you're going to be the Pac-12.
You're not going to lose to the SEC and Big 12 on UNLV. They're not getting a Big 10 SEC invite. That's not.
Yeah. Well, that's true. But think about this. I know I continue to beat the dead horse. But if the conference, the Big 12 has 16 BYUs. Ooh. Now you're talking about TV networks giving you a whole lot of money.
What do you mean by 16 BYUs?
I think that's become the Big 12's cash cow. This has become the most formidable program in athletics in the conference because of their commitment to football and basketball, NIL bank, and the way they've handled their business as the flagship university of one of the world's fastest growing faiths. Those are all like tick, 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 Salt Lake market as well. Things that conferences want, things that TV networks want. If you have 16 of those, same way that the ACC had 16 Clemsons, they would be valued a whole lot higher. So if you can start adding more potential BYUs, then the Big 12 can climb up in the ranks.
I hear that. Yeah. I just don't know. I just think it's so early. Like I'm here for the UNLV hype. I think they make more sense for the Pac-12 right now. And I think anything regarding, this quote that John Canzano reported about them having a plan for the Big 12, I don't think that's involved for 2026.
Can I say something?
I'll allow it.
The more we hear the Wilner quote about North Carolina kind of being a catalyst and expansion, and Clemson and Florida State, their lawsuit still, I guess, kind of existing, whatever that thing is, and the idea that by 2030, conference shakeup will happen again. I think we're all kind of on board with that. If you're Brett Yormark, you sit and wait. A little bit of this, I said a little earlier, hey, it's time, it's go time. Go time's really 2031. Until then, you're kind of sitting, and if you're Brett Yormark, you're on the phone with some of the medium dogs. Louisville, you're on the phone with Georgia Tech, you're on the phone, they're going, hey, when it really hits the fan in a couple years, we're your buddies, right? We're your pals. I think you're putting more time and effort into that than you are courting UNLV right now.
I agree with that assessment. I don't think it's an unrealistic play for 2030, and if I were the Pac-12, I'd go after UNLV too. Even if they're not going to be in it for the long run, the Pac-12 might not even be in it for the long run, but hold yourself over till 2030 and figure it out.
If only we had a locked-on Pac-12. Gosh dang it. I keep telling people we always should have had that.
Yeah. It was a good time. It was a good time. It was a fun time. It was not the longest of times, but it was a fun time. There's no doubt about it. Drake 12, everybody. Give him a round of no, don't give him a round of applause. You'll just encourage him to do the wrong things. We're gonna go to a once and future Big 12 school, right, Drake? Florida State. They made moves in the portal. Why? Because it's portal season, of course. Does that help their new offensive coordinator, Gus Malzahn, by the way, one-time Big 12 head coach? First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. A flip-flop of wide receivers at Florida State. Gavin Blackwell in, Jaylen Brown out, Brian Smith, Locked On Seminoles, and the Portal Podcast here on the show. So let's start with the addition for Florida State, Brian. I'm more than a little intrigued to see what Florida State does this year just because they're going from the worst preseason top 10 team statistically in the history of college football to something. We don't really know what that thing is. They're portal heavy again, even though it flopped last year. But they lost Hakeem Williams to Colorado, but they bring in Blackwell from North Carolina. Does he make this Florida State passing game better in a significant way, in your view?
No. He didn't play much the last couple of years. Look, I mean, he's a kid they knew out of high school and recruited. He's got some decent size, decent measurables. He can run, but he just hasn't had production. At the end of the day, if it's beyond a year or so and you don't have production, that's a problem. But he's been in college football like 3 years. So why should I believe he's suddenly going to be good? I'm not buying it. The problem is there aren't elite guys in the portal that they can get for the money they're willing to offer. That's simple as it gets. Florida State's NIL is okay, but it is not elite. That's a problem.
I wouldn't have thought that, given they were just in a lawsuit that's still kind of ongoing, but not really, to leave the ACC. And we were talking about, is Florida State going to pay $370 or $400 million to get out of the ACC? Are you telling me that was never going to happen, Brian?
That is 100% a fact. That was not. Now, the way the new structure is, I think it's after 26, it's like 150, 160 million. That's possible, but like 2029, it's like 75. I could see that. But yeah, that 300 million stuff, I mean, zero chance. Plus, they have the facilities they're just fixing up. Doak Campbell, it was $150, $200 million. It's supposed to be ready for the Alabama game, but like everything was terrible timing. And on top of all that, Malzahn comes in and all that, but it's because they didn't want to fire the head coach who had just signed a mega contract, and they would have owed him everything to fire. Or else, if you go 2-10 and you're at the end of your contract, you're done. Let's be honest.
Right.
So money just didn't work.
Yeah. So with the addition of Blackwell to the room, do you think it's just a depth piece sort of move from Mike Norvell? Like, we'll might as well add him, see if he works out, see if we can get the most out of him. Do you think receiver is a position where Florida State has an iffy level of production? Because last year they, had brought in some guys like Malik Benson, for instance, and he's at Oregon now, but he went to Florida State and there was no passing game to speak of. That's, of course, a revamped unit for Florida State.
The problem with Florida State's unit is they got Deuce Robinson and they got Squirrel White, both out of the portal, both very productive, both have a chance to make a roster in the NFL. But after that, they have zero experience. Zero. Javen Boggs has been talked about as a possible starter. He's a true freshman. Elijah Moore, BJ Gibson, Wayne McCoy, those guys are sophomores, all very talented, all highly recruited, but they barely played last year. So I think adding any experienced receiver, especially one, again, they've recruited him out of high school, that made sense. The leadership factor, having a guy with a little size, a little speed, it can't hurt. That's my guess. And again, I just don't think they want to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on a receiver because they got other talented guys, but they're probably a year away. It'll be a little iffy this year if and when Deuce or Squirrel get banged up. Those two guys cannot get hurt.
Thomas Castellanos likely to be Florida State's starting quarterback this year. Brian, I hope for the sake of the fans in Tallahassee, the answer to this next question is yes.
Okay.
Will the passing game be better than it was in 2024?
Is the sun going to come up tomorrow? I mean, the low bar that you set that with, I mean, the answer is yes. I know Thomas from his high school days. He has a cannon. They're going to run an offense, which is going to be downhill, probably run it about 55, 60% of the time and throw deep. That's his strength. And they got speed and size. They don't have any problem athletically outside. It's just inexperience. But they're not going to run a real complex offense. It should be pretty basic. Screens, bombs, and some deep outs and stuff like that. He's got a gun. But can you really be any worse? I mean, there are high school teams that had better passing games than Florida State last year.
Yeah, it was bad. It was as bad
as
I can remember. I tell you what, if you wanted to have what in golf you'd call a bloodsome, which is where you play team golf, but you play the worst ball between you and your partner.
Ooh.
Exactly. Bloodsome. You got to have some good players if you're going to play a bloodsome and not have a 6-hour round. But if you were to make that comparison to other teams in college football, I think the only one comparable to last year's FSU, toss a couple of Iowa offenses in there. That's the only one that comes to mind immediately for me that was as inept as Florida State was, just completing a forward. I mean, a slant felt like a Hail Mary.
That's a great quote.
It just wasn't. Everything was so difficult, and it was just, let's throw a screen pass on 3rd and 8. Like, why are you doing that? Because there's no other option.
They couldn't pass protect. The biggest problem when the quarterbacks were scared to death, and they should have been. They should have been given free life insurance because of how bad it was up front. Go look at for your entertainment value for anybody out there, go look at the PFF grades for the offensive linemen last year. Just for your sheer entertainment.
Did any of them hit 70?
There was a couple that played some, but there were games where it looked like a turnstile.
Not good.
There was one play, literally, where 3 Florida State offensive linemen went to 1 linebacker.
Oh, this is not good. This is not good. Not good. Not great, Bob. Not great.
So the quarterback play was bad. The O-line play was bad. And some of the passes were just dead on. Like Malik Benson could fly. He's got hands of stone. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That was hard to cover.
It was. Yeah, it was tough. Speaking of Florida State wide receivers, by the way, I did want to touch on Jalen Brown, who transferred from Florida State after transferring in from LSU. Pretty highly rated recruit coming out of high school, top 75 player in the class of 2023. He's going to the SEC, or back to the SEC, I should say, making his way to Arkansas. Do you expect the Hogs to have just gotten a game changer or more of a specialist receiver sort of guy?
Super fast, but he just never adapted. Like route running and understanding everything, being physical, all the stuff after the snap is the problem. If he gets behind somebody, it's over. He's one of the fastest players I've ever watched in high school, like insane speed. But he's a track guy playing football right now. He's just not physical enough. Now he's going to the SEC. Okay.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
That's all I'm going to leave it at.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of activity for Florida State. 3 guys leaving, winding up at Power 4 schools. bringing guys in. I like the Squirrel White edition.
He's good.
Yeah, I like Squirrel White. I know Eric Kane of Locked On Vols is not quite, or the Tennessee fan base at least, is not quite as high on him as I am, maybe. But I think that his perception of underperformance was a little bit more about Nico and a little bit less about the talent that Squirrel White has. Has he upgraded with Thomas Castellanos? I'll give you that question to wrap up the segment. Is this year's Castellanos better than, not the baseball player, better than last year's Nico Iamaleava?
Yes, because it's with Gus Malzahn's offense. And just to use Squirrel as an example, he'll catch 60 to 70 balls this year, a lot of screens, a lot of reverses, short stuff, where the poor soul in front of him's got to tackle Squirrel one-on-one. Good luck. They're just going to get him the ball and let him kind of play basketball on grass. It's not fun, but you still got to do it. And if you don't shade to him, it's hard. But if you do, then they're going to throw to that 6'6" guy, Deuce Robinson. So it's a tough pill to swallow. Florida State's top 2 receivers can match up with any school in the country. It's just they got so much talent that's young behind it. Again, neither one of those can get hurt. So they'll have some moments, but they'll also probably have some duds too.
Aim low and achieve. That's what my family and I always say. That's the FSU passing game with Brian Smith of Locked On FSU, the Portal Podcast. As well, we're going back across the country to Provo. BYU is adding Stanford players because I don't really know why, but I know somebody who does. First, this episode brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Check them out at Amazon Fire TV. What are the Cougars doing with the Bachmeier brothers? I don't know. Jake Hatch of Locked On BYU Cougars, though, probably does know. So Stanford, and I always feel obliged to remind people of this, Jake, has added a program record 18 transfers. This hasn't just been an exodus from the Bay Area. I know. I know. I'm telling many people for the first time. 18 transfers have gone to Stanford this offseason, but 2 have departed and made their way to Provo. Let's start with the wide receiver angle of this. Is this a 1-to-1 replacement for Keelan Marion, who is now down at Miami?
1-to-1 is probably a stretch, but I do think that Tiger Bachmeier has got everything capable of filling in adequately, along with other wide receivers already on the roster for BYU. The one thing I can say about Tiger Bachmeier is he is a more complete receiver, speaking of just simply in the wide receiver sense, than Keelan Marion was. Keelan Marion is an extremely effective kick returner. He's an All-American, in fact, and that part, you have a hard time, I think, replacing that, but I think as an overall wide receiver, Tiger Bachmeier is the better product in terms of just being a sheer wide receiver.
Do you think he's brought in and expect to contribute in a big way? Because a month ago, we could have done a segment highlighting the BYU receiver room. What does Jake Retzloff have around him? And Keelan Marion's probably option 2 or 3 in that room on the perimeter. Is that where you think Tiger Bachmeier slides in?
Yeah, right now, Chase Roberts would be the wide receiver 1. I think JoJo Phillips is probably that secondary guy as the Z or the X on the outside. And then Parker Kingston is probably the guy I pencil into that slot receiver spot. But then I think Tiger Bachmeier right now, you can pencil him in that second unit. And that's a great place to be because BYU rotates their wide receivers heavily. They've played as many as 8 guys in rotation last year at wide receiver. And that will obviously give Tiger an opportunity to play a bigger role in the BYU offense. And the thing is, I'm not concerned about him getting up to speed. This kid, if you didn't hear it, he graduated in computer science in 2.5 years at Stanford. That's genius level nonsense. So I don't have a problem with him coming in and learning this play because he will get up to speed very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's some Big Bang Theory level credentials right there from Tiger Bachmeier. What else would you expect from a football player coming out of Stanford, right? Like, yeah, 2.5 years, I'm done with my degree. Like, I'm good.
And computer science, no less. He can write the code for your next algorithm or whatever you want to use.
Yeah, maybe they should half enlist him to be a wide receiver and half enlist him to digitize the playbook. Maybe they're bringing him in to say, hey, we want to get our playbook instead of having like flip through pieces of paper like it's 1970. We'd like to digitize this whole thing. And Tiger, we think you are the guy to do just that. So it seems like this move happened very quickly, Jake, where, Tiger Bachmeier, I don't think he'd been in the portal for a super long time. And once Marion left, it was like, okay, we got to go find some. Oh, that seems like a really good addition. So do you think that, this was just going out and making the biggest NIL offer or the package deal with his brother, who we'll get to in just a moment? Why do you think BYU was able to go out and get a guy who was a pretty highly rated recruit and has got a couple of years of college football experience?
I think the number one thing is BYU already had a relationship with him. Aaron Roderick, Fesi Sitake, they did a really good job recruiting him out of high school. Now, he ultimately picked Stanford, as we all know, and played 2 years there, but that relationship still stood when he hit the transfer portal. You mentioned Bear, his younger brother. Bear actually hit the portal before Tiger, but the reports out there, and I had people tell me that they were a package deal. They wanted to play together their next stop, and BYU had already recruited Bear as well out of high school, and that relationship, I think, with the BYU staff was a big reason why BYU is able to attract these two to come to Provo. But the other thing is NIL plays a role, and BYU is throwing a significant amount of money into both football and basketball. I'm not saying they're going to break the bank for either one of these guys, but I would imagine that there was a pretty healthy NIL offer on the table for both of them, and they're going to cash in alongside playing for the BYU Cougars.
I know for some college football fans that carries a negative connotation. Oh, they just went out and they paid the money. Like, what do you want them to not care? You want them to be behind the eight ball, like dragging their feet on all this sort of Stanford stuff? Yeah, like Stanford. Yeah, who would you rather be? Who would you rather be in the modern world of college football? The school that's throwing a bunch of money at players because that's what it takes sometimes to get the recruits and portal additions you need? Or would you rather be Stanford? We're going to do it our way. They have won 9 games in 3 years. So, yeah, I mean, I guess there's more than one way to go about it. There's the quote-unquote right way, and there's the winning football way. You choose whatever you like for those fans that are in that camp out there. But Tiger, Bear, epic brother combination name. I mean, of all the matches for brothers that we've had in college football, Bear and Tiger, oof, that's good. And also, the Bachmeiers are like the Uyunglele's. There's always going to be one in college football for a child's entire lifetime born in the right window. So these two guys are, of course, the younger brother of the former Wake Forest quarterback, Hank Bachmeier. Then there's a fourth one that is in the pipeline out there. But BYU just has 2 for now. For now, right? But let's talk about Bear, the quarterback. 2025 recruit, committed to play for Troy Taylor. Andrew Luck makes the change in Palo Alto, and Bear decides, nope, I'm going elsewhere. Do you look at Bear Bachmeier as quarterback of the future for BYU?
He's absolutely in the mix. There's no reason he can't be that quarterback of the future. The biggest thing for him, he's got to refine his game just a little bit and become more of a quarterback who's athletic versus being an athlete who plays QB. He's got every skill under the sun to be that type of a quarterback. And I've said this on a couple other podcasts. I don't invoke the name of Taysom Hill very often, but I see shades of Taysom Hill in Bear Bachmeier's game. But he is a more complete quarterback version of a Taysom Hill at the age he's at, speaking of being a freshman at BYU. Bear will be in the mix next spring alongside McKay Hillstead and Trayson Bourget, and obviously Enoch Watson coming home off of a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Those 4 will be the guys competing to replace Jake Retzloff, but there's no reason to think that Bear Bachmeier, if he comes in, makes a really good impression this training camp throughout the summer and on into the season, that he couldn't be the presumptive favorite to take over that job next year.
I want to go down a sicko rabbit hole for a moment.
Okay.
Trayson Bourget. Would that be Trenton Bourget's brother?
It would be his younger brother, yes. The Bourget, you want to talk about football families? The Bourgets, they're a quarterback family. Trenton obviously playing at Arizona State. Trayson went to Western Michigan, then transferred to BYU. There's a lot of families out there, man, that have played a lot of football. And you mentioned the Bachmeiers. Hank played all over the country, Boise State, Louisiana Tech, and Wake Forest. And the youngest brother, Buck, is only a freshman in high school. So in theory, it could work out that by the time Bear Bachmeier is done in Provo, the young Buck, as it were, could end up in Provo as well.
Trenton Bourget is as much of a sicko college football name as you could possibly know. That's how I'm going to present my credentials for our weekly or annual check-in from the bosses at Locked On. Why do you think you should still be hosting this show? I brought up Trenton Bourget the other day, the former ASU walk-on quarterback that laid a foundation and beat Kalen DeBoer's Washington team, was the last Pac-12 team to do so until they went to the national championship game. Those are my credentials. All right, that's where I could.
I got to point this way. Sickos Committee, hook up my brother Spencer McLaughlin.
Yeah, Sickos Committee, baby. That's the way we roll here on Locked On College Football. Jake Hatch, Locked On BYU. Great as always. I appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a great weekend, and we'll see you then.